The ultimatum. The Galactic Assembly Hall stretched across 3 kilometers of artificial gravity space, suspended in orbit around Nexus Prime, the neutral world chosen for its distance from any major power's territory. The hall's crystalline walls shifted with prismatic light, designed to accommodate the visual spectrum of over 200 species. Today, those walls reflected tension, concern, and a faint undercurrent of fear. At the center of the hall, the holographic display showed the latest crisis point: the Orion Arm territories, specifically the 12 systems recently colonized by humanity. The Silveri hegemony's representative, High Commander Philaxis, stood at the primary speaking podium, his slender, 9-foot frame draped in ceremonial battle robes that shimmered with embedded accomplishment markers. "These systems," Philaxis said, his voice translator carrying the particular harmonic frequencies that indicated absolute certainty in Silveri culture, "require proper administration. Humanity lacks the experience to manage 12 systems with such abundant resources. The hegemony proposes a 50-year stewardship arrangement that will protect these worlds while providing the infrastructure and guidance our human friends clearly need." Around the Great Hall, representatives from 100 civilizations watched. Some nodded in agreement. The Silveri had managed similar stewardships before, always legally, always with the backing of the Assembly. Others remained carefully neutral, their expressions inscrutable. The Silveri were the 3rd oldest civilization in known space, with fleets larger than the next 4 powers combined. Nobody openly challenged them without consequences. Assembly Chairperson Exor Lumina, a being of pure energy contained within an environment suit, raised a manipulator appendage. "We have heard the hegemony's proposal. The Council notes that Earth's representative appears to be absent." Again, a murmur rippled through the hall. This would be the 3rd time in as many cycles that humanity had failed to appear for a critical vote. "Perhaps," Philaxis suggested, his mandibles clicking in what those familiar with Silveri expressions would recognize as amusement, "our youngest galactic siblings are still struggling with intergalactic transit schedules. Or perhaps they recognize the wisdom in our proposal and see no need to object." Laughter, some genuine, some nervous, spread through sections of the hall. Earth had joined the galactic community only 26 years ago, when a Medusan survey ship discovered humans had achieved primitive FTL travel. They were considered diplomatic children, well-meaning but naive, their single voice on the Council barely audible amongst the ancient powers. "The proposal will be held open for 1 standard day to allow for Earth's input," Exor Lumina announced. "Without objection, we shall then proceed to a formal vote." Philaxis bowed slightly, visibly pleased. The hegemony's intelligence suggested that Earth's delegation was in disarray after their last ambassador had resigned in protest over the Assembly's failure to support human mining rights in the Ta-CD system. The stewardship would pass unopposed, and the hegemony would gain control of the richest resource sector discovered in the past 3 centuries. The great doors at the rear of the Assembly Hall whispered open. A single human walked in. She was short by galactic standards, perhaps 5'7" in Earth measurements, with dark skin and hair pulled back in a severe knot. She wore no ceremonial robes, no ornate insignia of office, just a simple black uniform with a small blue Earth emblem on the collar. She carried no visible weapons, no entourage, no data slates, just a small metallic case tucked under one arm. Ambassador Elena Morales, representing Earth and all human settled worlds, announced the hall's AI in its neutral voice. Every eye, visual sensor, and sensory appendage in the hall tracked her as she walked calmly to the Earth podium. The click of her boots against the polished floor was the only sound. Philaxis recovered quickly. "We welcome Earth's representative," he said smoothly. "You arrive at a fortuitous moment. We were just discussing a stewardship arrangement that would protect your Orion Arm settlements while—" "No." Ambassador Morales' voice cut through the hall without being raised. The single word hung in the air, direct and unembellished. Philaxis's upper limbs twitched in surprise. "I beg your pardon." "The proposal is denied," Morales said, placing her case on the podium. Earth rejects any stewardship, oversight, or management of our sovereign territories. The assembly hall fell silent. Direct rejections without diplomatic cushioning were considered borderline offensive in assembly protocol. Xoer Luminous containment suit glowed slightly brighter. Ambassador Morales, while Earth certainly has the right to voice concerns, the hegemony's proposal includes substantial infrastructure investment and defensive arrangements that would benefit your colony significantly. We're not interested. Morales opened her case and removed a data crystal, which she slotted into the podium interface. Instead, I've been authorized to present Earth's counter-proposal. The holographic display in the center of the hall shifted, showing a map of not just the 12 human colonies in the Orion Arm, but also displaying 37 Silveri outposts and bases throughout the sector. What is the meaning of this? Thelaxis demanded, mandibles clicking rapidly now. Morales looked directly at him. Over the past 15 years, the Silveri hegemony has established 37 military and resource extraction bases in territory recognized by treaty as under human jurisdiction. These installations were disguised as scientific outposts or trading posts, but our intelligence confirms their true purpose. A murmur rippled through the assembly. Thelaxis's body language shifted to a defensive posture. These allegations are unfounded. The hegemony maintains peaceful research stations with the full knowledge of local authorities. 3 days ago, Morales continued as if he hadn't spoken. Your research station in the Proxima Centauri system destroyed 2 civilian mining vessels that approached too closely. 28 humans died. The murmur grew louder. Thelaxis' inner eyelids flickered rapidly. If such an incident occurred, it was surely a misunderstanding. Perhaps your mining vessels failed to respond to standard identification protocols. The vessels were unarmed, transmitting civilian IDs on all standard frequencies, Morales said. The display changed to show sensor logs of the incident. Your station fired without warning. Xoer Lumina intervened. These are serious accusations, Ambassador, but they should be addressed through proper diplomatic channels, beginning with a formal investigation. We're past investigations. Morales triggered another command on her podium. The holographic display expanded, now showing the current positions of ships throughout the sector. Hundreds of them, arranged in formation. Human ships. By the eternal void, someone whispered. Where did they get so many vessels? Humanity has been building in secret, another voice said. Look at those configurations. Those aren't civilian designs. Thelaxis stared at the display, his posture now rigid with shock. This is impossible. Our intelligence indicated Earth possessed fewer than 50 interstellar-capable warships. Your intelligence was incomplete, Morales said simply, as was your understanding of human nature. The display zoomed in to show one of the ships more clearly. Its design was unlike anything seen in the assembly before. Angular, predatory, with weapon systems unlike standard galactic configurations. 3 hours ago, the United Earth Defense Fleet moved into position around every Silveri installation in human territory, Morales announced. Each base is currently targeted by multiple vessels. Additionally, we have deployed special operations teams to the surface of every world where your forces are present. The assembly erupted in voices. Several representatives stood. Others called for order. Xoer Luminous containment suit flashed with agitation. This is an act of war. Thelaxis shouted, abandoning all pretense of diplomatic calm. The hegemony will not be threatened by primitives barely out of their gravity well. Morales remained unnervingly calm. This isn't a threat, High Commander. This is an ultimatum. The Silveri hegemony will withdraw all military forces from human territory within 48 hours. You will acknowledge human sovereignty over the Orion Arm colonies. You will pay reparations for the lives lost at Proxima Centauri. She paused, making eye contact with Thelaxis. If these terms are not met, we will remove your presence ourselves. The hegemony fleet will crush your upstart forces before your ultimatum expires, Thelaxis snarled. Perhaps, Morales agreed. But did your intelligence tell you about Earth's planetary defense systems, the ones we've installed on every colony world? The display changed again, showing schematics of massive ground-based weapons platforms. If the hegemony fleet enters human space with hostile intent, these systems will activate. They're programmed to target specific coordinates. Another shift in the display, now showing the locations of the hegemony's major shipyards, command centers, and most populated worlds. A collective gasp ran through the assembly. Philaxis stumbled back from his podium. "You wouldn't dare," he whispered. "Even suggesting planetary bombardment violates every convention of civilized warfare." "We studied your history, High Commander," Morales said, her voice still eerily calm. "The Silveri hegemony rose to power 800 years ago by threatening precisely such actions against your rivals. You never actually had to destroy a planet. The threat was enough. We learned from your example." Exor Lumina floated forward. "Ambassador Morales, what you are suggesting would make Earth a pariah among civilized worlds. The Assembly cannot. The Assembly has stood by while the hegemony and others carved up the galaxy for centuries." Morales interrupted. "Earth tried playing by your rules. We sent diplomats. We filed complaints. We requested investigations. And while we waited for justice, our people died." She looked around the hall, meeting the gaze of each major power's representative in turn. "Humanity is done waiting. We're done being underestimated. We're done being exploited while the Assembly debates procedural motions." Morales closed her case with a decisive click. "High Commander Philaxis, you have 48 hours to begin withdrawal. Assembly Chairperson Exor Lumina, Earth requests that this session be adjourned to allow the hegemony time to consider our terms." For a moment, the hall was absolutely silent. Then, Exor Lumina's voice, subdued now, "This session is adjourned until further notice." As representatives began filing out in stunned silence, Philaxis approached Morales. His translator switched to private mode. "You have no idea what you've done," he hissed. "The hegemony has crushed dozens of species who dared to challenge us." Morales looked up at him, unintimidated by his towering form. "Then you should understand perfectly what happens next. You pushed too far. Now you face the consequences." As she turned to leave, Philaxis called after her. "What made you think you could threaten the oldest power in the galaxy and survive?" Morales paused at the door. "Human history is full of upstarts defeating empires, Commander. It's practically our specialty." The Reckoning. The Silveri War Council chamber aboard the dreadnought Inevitable Dominance throbbed with tension. Emergency lighting cast harsh shadows across the faces of the 12 highest-ranking commanders of the hegemony fleet. At the center of the room, a holographic display showed the tactical nightmare unfolding across human space. High Commander Philaxis paced around the display, his ceremonial robes discarded for battle armor. "Our intelligence failure is complete," he said, voice tight with barely controlled fury. "How did we miss this level of military buildup? How did the humans conceal an entire defense network from our surveillance?" Fleet Admiral Soraxis, her carapace bearing the scars of 3 previous wars, gestured at the display. "They didn't build in their own systems. Our analysis shows these ships were constructed in deep space, in the void between stars, using mobile shipyards. No fixed infrastructure to detect." "Primitive cunning," another commander muttered. "Primitive or not, their ultimatum expires in 18 hours. Philaxis said, "The Hegemony Council demands we suppress this human rebellion immediately and decisively." Admiral Soraxis's mandibles clicked in a pattern expressing skepticism. "With respect, High Commander, a direct assault would be unwise. These human vessels employ technologies we haven't encountered before. Their weapon signatures don't match any known configuration. Are you suggesting the mighty hegemony fleet cannot overcome a species that achieved spaceflight barely a century ago?" Philaxis demanded. "I'm suggesting caution," Soraxis replied. "The humans have demonstrated they're not the diplomatic children we believe them to be. Their threat to target our homeworlds is unconscionable, but we must consider the possibility they're capable of carrying it out. The tactical display shifted to show the human defense platforms. Their design was unlike anything in the Galactic archives. Brutal, efficient, without the aesthetic considerations most species incorporated into their weapons of war. Pure function, observed the hegemony's chief weapons analyst. These platforms aren't designed to intimidate or impress. They're designed solely to kill. In the observation lounge of the United Earth Defense Fleet flagship Retribution, Ambassador Elena Morales stood beside Fleet Admiral Hassan Chen, watching as Silveri vessels began pulling back from 3 of the 37 contested installations. "They're testing us," Chen observed, his weathered face illuminated by the tactical displays. "Withdrawing from the least valuable outposts while reinforcing the resource-rich ones. They don't believe we'll follow through." Morales nodded. "The Silveri have used the same playbook for 8 centuries. Intimidate, concede temporarily when necessary, then return in greater strength once attention has shifted elsewhere." "Will the Assembly intervene?" Chen asked. "They're in emergency session now. Half of them are terrified of us. The other half are watching with interest to see if someone can finally break the hegemony stranglehold." Morales checked the countdown on her wrist display. 17 hours until our deadline. "The strike teams are in position at all 37 locations," Chen confirmed. "Planet-side defenses are at full readiness. The question is whether the Silveri will call our bluff about the long-range planetary targeting systems." Morales' expression remained impassive. "It's not a bluff, Admiral." Chen studied her face. "The UN Security Council actually authorized Directive Omega. Full retaliatory strikes against civilian targets. What the Council authorized is classified beyond your clearance, Admiral," Morales said quietly. "All you need to know is that I am fully empowered to execute every threat I made in that assembly hall." Back in the assembly, chaos reigned. Representatives from 100 worlds argued vehemently about the human ultimatum. Some called for sanctions against Earth for its barbaric threats. Others quietly suggested that perhaps the Silveri had finally encountered a species unwilling to be bullied into submission. Hizor Lumina struggled to maintain order. "We must consider a negotiated solution. If the humans and Silveri engage in open warfare, the economic disruption alone won't." "The humans must be made an example of," interrupted the Valkyrian delegate, a longtime Silveri ally. "Their behavior violates every principle of civilized discourse. The Assembly should authorize a multi-species peacekeeping force to disarm these dangerous upstarts." From the back of the hall, an elderly Medusan rose slowly. The hall quieted. The Medusans rarely spoke in assembly matters, preferring contemplation to debate. This particular Medusan, Scholar Captain Neris, had discovered humans 26 years earlier. "I have observed humanity since first contact," Neris said, her translator rendering her subsonic communications into standard galactic. "Their history is unique among known species. While most of us evolved through cautious, incremental advancement, humans surged forward in explosive bursts of innovation, often driven by conflict." She moved to the central speaking podium. "Their world wars, conflicts limited to a single planet, drove technological advancement at rates that would have taken other species centuries. Their competitive nature, which many find distasteful, created a species that thrives under pressure." Neris activated her own data crystal. The display showed Earth's rapid technological progression from primitive flight to space exploration, a mere 66 years from the first airplane to walking on their moon. "The Assembly made a critical error in judgment," she continued. "We assumed humanity's peaceful diplomatic approach indicated weakness or naivety. We failed to recognize it for what it was, remarkable restraint from a species evolved to fight." In the Hegemony War Council, the atmosphere had shifted from righteous anger to growing concern. Reports were coming in from across Silveri space. Human merchant ships had suddenly disappeared from every hegemony world simultaneously. Civilian communication channels with human systems had gone silent. "They're preparing for war," Admiral Saraxis observed, "withdrawing their people, isolating their systems." "The withdrawal looks complete," another commander noted, "as if they had evacuation plans in place for years." Phylaxis stared at the display, watching as the countdown to the human deadline continued its inexorable progress. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered finally. "We will make a show of withdrawing from the contested installations, but position our forces just beyond sensor range. Once the humans believe they've won, we'll strike with overwhelming force." Sorax's posture indicated deep reservation. "High Commander, I must formally register my objection. The human capabilities remain largely unknown. This course of action risks." "Your objection is noted, Admiral." Phylaxis cut her off. "The hegemony has faced upstart species before. They all broke against our might eventually." As the Silveri commanders filed out to prepare their forces, Soraxis remained behind. When she was alone with Phylaxis, she spoke in the ancient Silveri tongue, without translator assistance. "You weren't there for the Exorian conflict," she said quietly. "I was. Another species that threatened dire consequences if we didn't withdraw from their territory. We crushed them, yes, but they managed to destroy 3 of our colony worlds before they fell. 12 billion Silveri died." Phylaxis's inner eyelids flickered. "The humans don't have that capability. Are you certain enough to risk our homeworld on that assessment?" With 2 hours remaining on the ultimatum, the Silveri began a visible withdrawal from all contested installations. Hegemony ships departed human space in formation, broadcasting their compliance on all frequencies. The assembly breathed a collective sigh of relief, already planning the diplomatic initiatives that would formalize the new status quo. On the Retribution, Admiral Chen watched the Silveri fleet movements with deep suspicion. "They're putting on a show," he said to Morales. "See these departure vectors. They're positioning just beyond our conventional sensor range." Morales nodded. "As expected. The hegemony never surrenders. They just retreat and regroup. Shall we extend the deadline? Give them more time to complete a genuine withdrawal?" "No," Morales said. "The time for extensions passed when they killed our miners at Proxima." She activated her secure communication link to Earth. "This is Ambassador Morales. Authorization code Thermopylae 7 Delta 9. Confirm Operation Prometheus is ready for execution." The reply came almost instantly. "Confirmed, Ambassador. Awaiting your command." As the deadline expired, the Silveri ships held position just beyond human space, waiting for the human fleet to stand down so they could implement their counterattack. On the inevitable dominance, Phylaxis received confirmation that all ships were in position. "The humans appear satisfied with our show of compliance," his tactical officer reported. "Their fleet remains in defensive posture, but they've made no hostile moves." "Excellent," Phylaxis said. "Prepare for." The ship's sensors blared sudden warnings. Throughout Silveri space, on every major world, orbital platform, and military installation, small devices that had been smuggled aboard merchant vessels over the past decade simultaneously activated. Not bombs, something worse. Massive data intrusion across all systems. A technician cried. "Our networks are being flooded with unknown code." On the Retribution, Morales watched as confirmation signals came in from across Silveri space. "Operation Prometheus successfully initiated," she announced. "All Silveri military networks are now compromised." Admiral Chen stared at her. "We hacked their entire military infrastructure. We've had backdoors in their systems for 15 years, Morales explained. "Every merchant ship, every diplomatic pouch, every cultural exchange, all carried fragments of our infiltration software, designed to remain dormant until activated." The Silveri were so convinced of their technological superiority that they never considered we might have surpassed them in digital warfare. Throughout hegemony space, Silveri warships suddenly lost power. Defense platforms went dark. Communication arrays fell silent. The mighty hegemony fleet found itself paralyzed, not by kinetic weapons or energy beams, but by the invisible hand of human code. On the assembly broadcast channels, Ambassador Morales' voice reached every world in the galaxy. The Silveri hegemony attempted to deceive both humanity and the Galactic Assembly, she announced. Rather than comply with our ultimatum, they positioned their forces for a counterattack. In response, we have neutralized their military capability without firing a single shot or taking a single life. The assembly hall erupted in astonishment. Many representatives couldn't comprehend what they were witnessing. The Silveri hegemony, invincible for 8 centuries, had been defeated in moments. Humanity came to the galactic community seeking peaceful cooperation, Morales continued. Instead, we found a system where the powerful exploit the weak with impunity. We tried to work within that system. We failed. So we changed the rules. In the Hegemony War Council, emergency power barely illuminated the faces of the stunned commanders. How is this possible? Philaxis whispered, watching as reports of system failures cascaded across their remaining functional displays. Admiral Soraxis laughed bitterly. We studied their weapons, their ships, their obvious technology. We never considered that their true strength might lie elsewhere. She turned to face him. They let us believe they were primitive because it suited their purpose. While we watched for warships, they were fighting a different kind of war entirely. On the assembly broadcast, Morales outlined humanity's terms. The Silveri would withdraw not just from human space, but would reduce their military presence in all border regions. The hegemony would submit to regular inspections to ensure compliance. Reparations would be paid not just to humanity, but to all species who had suffered under Silveri stewardship over the past century. These terms are non-negotiable, she concluded. The Silveri systems will remain compromised until a formal agreement is signed and implementation begins. Should the hegemony attempt any form of retaliation, the consequences will be severe and immediate. As the broadcast ended, the assembly sat in stunned silence. Then, slowly, representatives of worlds long oppressed by the hegemony began to applaud. 3 days later, Ambassador Morales sat across from High Commander Philaxis in a private chamber adjacent to the assembly hall. Between them lay a data tablet containing the formal agreement ending the brief, bloodless war that had rewritten the galaxy's power structure. You humiliated us, Philaxis said quietly. We stopped you, Morales corrected. There's a difference. What prevents us from rebuilding, from finding and eliminating your infiltration pathways, from returning with greater force? Morales smiled thinly. The same thing that should have prevented you from threatening us in the first place, the understanding that humanity doesn't make empty threats. Cross us again, and digital warfare will be just the beginning. Philaxis studied her. Your people are dangerous. Yes, Morales agreed simply. We are. But we prefer to be friends rather than enemies. That choice has always been yours. As Philaxis signed the agreement, formally acknowledging the new balance of power, a thought occurred to him. When you threatened our homeworlds in the assembly, was that real? Did you actually have the capability to strike our core systems? Morales stood, collecting the tablet. For the sake of peaceful relations going forward, let's both hope you never have to find out. In the assembly hall, as news of the signed agreement spread, Scholar Captain Neris approached Xor Lumina. The galaxy is changed, the Medusan observed. For better or worse remains to be seen. Do you regret discovering them? Xor Lumina asked. Neris considered the question. No, the hegemony's dominance was leading us toward stagnation. Humanity brings unpredictability, yes, but also possibility. They shattered assumptions centuries in the making in a matter of days. They're frightening, Xor Lumina said. Yes, Neris agreed. But perhaps we needed to be frightened. Comfort breeds complacency. Humanity has reminded us that the universe remains full of surprises. As Ambassador Morales prepared to return to Earth, she paused to look once more at the great assembly hall, now forever changed by humanity's emergence as a galactic power. We came seeking friendship, she murmured to herself. We'll have it now, built on respect rather than exploitation. The respect that comes when the galaxy learned, too late for some, that humanity's greatest weapon was never its ships or its codes or its threats. It was the fact that humanity always keeps its promises.